Okay, so just sit yourself on your lift. So come into a good cross leg position. Have a little wriggle about so that you feel that you're sitting evenly. And then just spend a few moments just observing how you're feeling right now. Just observe your breath in its natural state. Observe the feeling of the skin, whether the skin feels tight or soft or relaxed or clenched. Just look down at the floor, look at something that doesn't move so that the eyeballs are still in the sockets. And then consciously press the palm skin into the skin of the knees, stretching the fingers down away from the palms. And then push the knees into the hands, and then push the hands into the knees. So perhaps you notice that when you push the knees into the hands, the lumbar spine draws inwards. When you push your hands into your knees, the heart area can lift. So lengthen the femur bone from the hip into the knee, into the palm. Press the palm into the knee, and then just observe the effect. Observe the effect of that lift on the skin, on the jaw, on the tongue. And then release your hands from your knees and bring them into Namaste. Try and maintain that action of lengthening into the knees and pushing the hands into the knees. Bring the hands into Namaste, lengthening from the armpits into the elbows. And then with an exhalation, allow your eyes to gently close. So draw your focus in through the nose down into the bottom of the lungs. Draw your breath in through the nose down into the bottom of the lungs and fill the lungs from the bottom to the top. Like you're filling a jug with water. Filling evenly on both sides. And then as you exhale, exhale from the top of the lungs down to the bottom. Just consciously drawing the lumbar spine in a little, lifting the heart area, drawing the shoulders down away from your ears. And then draw your chin with an exhalation down towards the chest. Reach up with the chest to meet the chin, to make a contact between the chest and the chin. Just spend a moment to seek to generate a genuine, heartfelt sense of gratitude for something or someone or somewhere. Hold on to that feeling of abundance in the heart area. And then release the backs of your hands down toward your knees, palms facing upwards. And as you raise your head, allow your eyes to softly open and the focus to come back. Just hold onto your knees, elevating the chest up to the ceiling. Take a deep inhalation in through the nose. And then turn to the right side, drawing your abdomen from the left to the right. Drawing your ribs across, your shoulders across. Just listening to the sound of the breath. And then come back to the center. Hold onto your knees, lift up into the chest, elevating the spine upwards. Take a deep inhalation. And then turn with an exhalation, turning from the abdomen and the ribs and the shoulders, just observing the sensations of the pose. Sometimes when we practice, we just kind of go through the motions and we're not really paying attention to the physical sensation. We're just going through the motions because this is what we do. This is our practice in the morning, but we don't engage with it. So spend a little time just observing the feelings of sensation as you come into the pose, those feelings of sensation that are what we might call a gross sensation, not gross as in disgusting, but just gross as in big and subtle. So just observe the subtle sensations, drawing your focus away from the gross sensations. Come back to the center. Just come off your knees and then come onto all fours. Have your hands as wide apart as the mat, spread in the palms. Really spread the skin of the palms on the mat. So feel that the skin of the palm stretches. Step back a little, turn your toes under. And then keep the palms flat into the floor. Be right up on your tiptoes. And elevate. Keep the knees bent to start off with and elevate the seat bones up towards the ceiling. Draw your focus into the pose through the sensations of the pose. The physical outcomes of bringing yourself into the pose. So those can be really obvious, like there's stiffness in your shoulders or there's resistance in your hips or whatever. But try and draw your focus into the more subtle sensations of the skin, subtle sensations around the rest of the body as you begin to straighten your legs. Observe how those gross sensations change and you start to activate elsewhere. So tighten the thighs, lift the thigh muscles up towards the seat bones. Tighten isn't the right word, lift is a better word. Lift the frontal thigh muscle up towards the top of the leg. Lift the back of the thigh up towards the top of the leg. Turn the front of the thigh inwards. Draw the kneecap into the socket. And breathe. Lift the seat bones up to the ceiling. And then, keeping the shins lifting out of the ankle socket, see if you can bring your heels down a little lower. But if you start to notice creases between the foot and the shin, then you're dropping your legs. So see if you can bring your heels down a bit at a time. Breathing evenly. So I've got discomfort. So I have to, in the outer ankle, so I've got to adjust so that I'm not putting all of my weight onto that area of discomfort. So I've got to draw and distract. And then come back up onto your tiptoes, step your feet forwards, and then come up into a standing position. Get a couple of blocks for your hands for half uttanasana. So have your feet as wide apart as the mat, lining the edge of your feet up with the edge of the mat. Stump the big toes into the floor. Stretch the little toes out to the side. Reach up into the hips. From the feet into the hips, from the hips up into the armpits. Lifting the heart area up towards the ceiling. Stretch your arms behind you. Lift up into the chest and then keep stretching the arms behind you. Keep driving forwards as you hinge at the hips. Drive forwards from the heart area, keeping the head lifted. Come forwards and then reach down. Find the hand, find the blocks beneath your shoulders. So allow your weight to push forwards so that your weight goes into your toes. And then go right up onto the tip toes, lifting the heels up off the floor. And then see if you can scoop the seat bones up a little bit higher. Make the seat bones lift up towards the ceiling. Project the chin and the chest forwards. So lift the seat bones away from the backs of the thighs. Keep the kneecaps tightened. Keep the thighs activated. Keep the shins hitting back. And then hit the shins away from the toes. But keep the seat bones lifted. Keep the seat bones lifted. Hit the shins away from the toes so that your weight comes into you bring the heels back down and you hit the shins back so that your weight consciously goes down into the heels. And then lift the seat bones up away. Stamp the heels consciously down into the floor. Hit your legs back a little bit more if you can't feel the weight in your heels. And then tilt the tailbone and the seat bones up, projecting the chin and the chest forward. So just activate the calf muscles by lifting the seat bones higher, by stretching the heels down away from the seat bones. If you can go down lower, then do. If you can reach down to the floor without losing that action of the legs, then do. This is quite strong in your back, so stay with lifts underneath your hands if you need to. But again, just come forward, bring your weight into your toes and then lift your heels away from the floor. Be right up on the tip toes. So drawing your weight forwards and then scoop the seat bones up a little higher. Projecting the chest away and then hit your legs back. Bring the heels down but keep the seat bones lifting up towards the ceiling. Pressing the shins back so that your weight is in your heels. Lifting the seat bones up away from the heels and then projecting the chin and the chest forwards. And if you can, just reach around the backs of your ankles and draw your body in, but keep pressing the heels down into the floor, lifting the seat bones away from the heels. Just breathing evenly and deeply, listening to the breath. Okay, bring your hands back into half uttanasana. And then walk your hands towards the end of your mat. Bring your hands shoulder width apart this time. And then bring your feet hip width apart. Again, pressing the palms into the floor. So don't allow your weight of your arms to really slam down into the heels of the hands because it becomes heavy. Distribute the weight of the arms and the body into the palm skin. So stretching from the heel of the hand into the palms, into the fingertips, into the fingernails. Be on your tip toes for a moment. Lifting the seat bones and then lifting those seat bones. See if you can bring your heels a little closer to the floor. But again, keeping an eye on those creases between the foot and the shin. lifting the shin so you get rid of those creases if you can. So it's quite easy to maybe for some to just bring the heels all the way down, and then you get a really good stretch of the calves. But then you get creases at the fronts of the legs. Maybe you get more crease on one leg than the other. So it tells you how much more you have to work perhaps in that leg. Okay, step your feet forwards, come up into a standing position, and then come up into Tadasana. Just observe the energy of the body, how there's energy in the head and the shoulders and the arms and the chest and the legs. Just listen to the breath. Listen to the breath as it enters and as it exits. Bring your arms out nice and wide in towards the chest, and then step your feet apart. Turn your heels, turn your left toes in slightly. Turn the right leg and foot all the way out. Just again, be conscious of the subtle sensations that just turning the feet bring into the legs. Lift up into the chest, stretch out into the arms, and then reach over. Observe what happens when you really work from that hip down into the heel of that back leg. Turn the chest all the more. Breathe evenly. Deeply look down. Is your head over your foot? If it's not, then turn the front of the thigh from the big toe to the little toe side a bit more so that you can draw the front leg buttock bone in. Resisting that forward action with the back leg. Stretching from the hip into the heel. And then turn up and look up. Just observing how much this pose helps to clear out the sinuses. Come back to the center. Just swap the feet around. Turn the right toes in and the left leg and foot all the way out. Again, just being conscious of those subtle actions in the legs as a result of turning the legs out. Working from the hip consciously into the heel of that back foot, keeping that back heel really consciously pressing down as you come down. Keep that heel really active. It helps you to lift the chest and then turn the chest, reaching up towards the ceiling. Breathe in deeply. Pushing that heel of the back foot consciously into the ground so that you can lengthen into the spine. Just look down, turn that leg, squeeze the front leg buttock bone forwards, resisting with that back leg, stamping the heel of that back foot into the floor. Breathing evenly. And then reach up with the top hand, come back to the center, bring your feet parallel, and then step or jump your feet back together. And then come back into Tadasana. Just spend a little time listening to the breath. Breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Just listening to the sounds of the breath. So we're going to do padangusthasana. So padangusthasana, you can, if you're protecting your back, you can do this just by coming halfway and just working like this. And you can work your legs and your spine in the same way as you do with padangusthasana. If you can't reach your toes, then you can use a belt and you hook the belt around your big toes. So you hook the belt around the big toes like this. So you bend your knees to find that if you need to, and then you just come down, having a bit of a tug of war with your big toes. So you keep the back straight, so it's not this, you're not rounding your back. Or as you come down, you lift the front chest as you come down. So have the feet hip width apart and turn the toes inwards. And then just breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Lengthen your arms down and lengthen your arms behind you. Really activating the legs. Tightening the kneecaps, lifting the thigh muscles firmly into the bone, turning the fronts of the thighs in. And then come forwards, hinging at the hips. Traditionally, you come forwards with the hands over your head, but this way helps you to focus on lifting the heart area. Come forwards, lifting your arms up to the ceiling. And then when you feel that you can probably reach your toes, then keep that front chest lifted and then bring the arms down. Hook the index finger and the middle finger underneath the big toe, the thumb around the outside of the big toe. And then activate your shins by pushing them back so that your weight is in your heels. Once your weight is in your heels, then lift up into the seat bones, projecting the heart area forwards. Keep the head lifted. Keep the head lifted so you work forwards from the heart. Just breathe evenly and deeply. Stamp the big toes into the floor. Try and rip them out of the floor like you're trying to rip a nail out of the floor. And then perhaps you can bend your elbows out to the sides and then draw a straight back in towards the gap between the legs. So I'm just going to stay at that first point because I can feel it kind of working a little too strongly in my back after my back injury. So lengthen the chest forwards. But then even if you come down, keep the spine extending away. Keep the legs straight. Okay, release your hands. Bring your hands into your hips and then bend your knees on the way up if you need to. Come up into a standing position. Good. And then just come into Tadasana. Again, just observing your energy, listening to the breath. Breathing evenly and deeply, listening to the sound of the breath. So the true calf muscle stretch comes in padahastasana. So padahastasana is really similar in many ways to padangusthasana. So you come forwards, lengthening the front of the chest forwards, and then you place the hand underneath the foot, so the sole of the foot in contact with the palm of the hand. And then again, you keep your legs straight, and then you lift the chest and drive yourself forwards. Now, if you can't bring your hands underneath your toes, and get a folded blanket to have it wide enough so that you can get both feet on it, and then maybe you just kind of fold it up so that it's quite high. So you've got kind of, if you sit on your blanket, then maybe you sit on it that way. But just unfold it so it's this kind of eighth fold, and then fold it down the middle, and then you've got this fairly high lift. So then you bring the top of the foot onto the lift and bring the heels onto the floor. So let's all do this. So this is just a way of really activating those shins. So I remember as a kid, I used to really like standing on the edge of the curb and lengthening my heels down to the floor, and then because it gives you a really good stretch in the calves. So have that lift underneath your feet, lift up into the chest and raise your arms up. Let's extend the heart area up towards the ceiling. And then hinge at the hips, keep the arms lifted as you come forwards, lengthening the front chest forwards. And then bring the feet underneath bring the hands underneath the feet even. And then project the chin and the chest forwards. If you're using the lift under your feet, then you can bring your hands onto your shins. Maybe you want to walk onto the height a little bit more. Just feel that you can really stretch out those calves. So hit the shins back so that your weight is in your heels. And then lengthen up with the seat bones, projecting the chin and the chest forward. Okay, and then just gently release your feet, bring your hands into your hips, and then come up into a standing position. And then maybe have that folded blanket for your back foot. So you might not need it, but it's there if you need it. Just stand with the blanket for your heels. So we can do Virabhadrasana 1. Just going to move my mat this way a bit so I've got more space. So have the inner edge of the feet together, lift up into the chest. So your heels are on the lift. Turn your left toes out to the side just a little, just to like 1 o'clock. And then step forwards with that right leg. So you don't want to be too wide, but you want to be wide enough so that you can keep that back heel pressing down into the floor, into the blanket. Lift up into the heart area. Turn the legs like you're doing Tadasana, turning them inwards. Keep the kneecap tightened on that back leg and then bend the front knee. Try and keep that heel down on the lift. Spread the toes of that back foot, lengthen from the toes into the heel of that back foot, and then lift up. Lift from the hips up into the heart area, into the chest. Find a right angle with that front leg. Keep pushing into that back heel, spreading the toes, lengthening from the toes into the heel, and then you get a stretch into the back of the calf muscle. Keep turning the back leg like you're doing Tadasana. Turning the front thigh inwards so that the back of the thigh broadens outwards. Okay, straighten the leg, bring the feet parallel to the front, and then step the feet in or jump, and then come into Tadasana. So Virabhadrasana 1, probably feel like your heart rate has increased a little. Just be with the breath. Lift up into the chest. And then bring the feet back onto the lift. Turn your right toes out slightly. And then step forwards with the left leg nice and wide. So at this stage, work to bring the hips level. Turn in the fronts of the thighs inwards so that the back of that back leg and the back of the front leg rotates outwards. Spread the toes of that back foot really deeply. And then press the toes into the floor and then lengthen from the toes into the heel of that back leg. And then bend the front knee, keeping that back leg really firm, tightened at the kneecap. Keep pushing down into the lift. Find your right angle. Lift up into the heart area. Just keep going until you find that right angle. So when you bring the right angle, the weight goes into the front foot. So lengthen into that back leg, really pushing into the toes, lengthening into the heel, and then raise your arms up. Feel that the spine is separate to the legs, but they're connected because the spine will only lift if the legs work, especially that back leg. Bending that knee, finding a right angle. Okay, straighten the legs. Bring the feet parallel. Step the feet together. And then just release your arms. Just breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. And then raise your arms up. Stretch the thumbs into the crease of the opposite elbow. And then hang down or into half uttanasana, just stretching out your back. Just coming halfway down, activating the legs. So just working with your own body, just listening to the breath, as you release into uttanasana. And then just release your arms down to the floor. Bring your hands into your hips, and with bent knees or straight legs, come up into a standing position. And then come onto all fours. Have your hands shoulder width apart. Step back, turn your toes under, and then come back up into dog down. And then consciously press the toes really firmly into the floor and stretch the heels away from the toes, like we were doing in Virabhadrasana 1. And then see if you can bring those heels down, but observe those creases at the fronts of the legs. If you notice them, then lift the seat bones higher. Press the heels down to the floor, lift the seat bones away, try and get rid of those creases. And then come down onto your knees. Just sit back on your heels. Just spend a moment to observe the energy that you have released through your practice. So it's warm, isn't it? So if you feel like you're sweating more on one side than the other, and it's telling you that perhaps you're working harder on one side than on the other. So I feel like my right side is sweating a bit more than the left. And that correlates with the creases on my feet. So on the right side, there were very few creases when I was bringing the heels down. On the other side, there were quite a few. So there's an imbalance in the way that I was working. So we don't do anything other than just observe. We don't try and castigate, if that's the right word. We just observe and we accept, and we make a resolve to address that later on in the practice. And then come forwards into Adho Mukha Virasana, keeping the heels down on the seat bones. Just lifting the chest. Try to keep the seat bones down. Have the knees wide enough apart so you can get your lower ribs through. And then bring the forehead down. Okay, bring your hands underneath your shoulders. And then just sit back on your heels one more time, just lifting up into chest, just observing your energy. And then just come into a seated position, just into cross legs. Just sitting in cross legs. Sit on a lift if you need to. If you find it difficult to lift the chest, then sit on a lift. Elevate the spine up towards the ceiling. Just breathing evenly and deeply. And with an exhalation, turn to the right side. Elevating the spine. Again, just observing the sensations of the pose. Observing whether the seat bones feel evenly weighted, whether there's more weight on one seat bone than the other. And then come back to the center, lift up into the chest, elevating the spine up towards the ceiling. Take a deep inhalation in through the nose. And then turn to the left, drawing your abdomen across your ribs, across your shoulders, across. And then come back to the center. Come down onto your back and just come down onto your back and pull your knees in towards your chest. Just have a little rock from side to side, top to bottom, just ironing out any tensions in the back. And then get your belt and then hook the belt around your feet and then elevate the legs up to the ceiling. Have the belt around the ball joint of the feet, one end of the belt in each hand, and then lengthen from the neck down into the tailbone, really bringing the tailbone down onto the floor. Draw the abdomen towards the spine to soften the lumbar, and then work to elevate the heels up to the ceiling, pulling the toes down to the floor, pushing up against the belt, lifting the heels up towards the ceiling, pushing the shins into the calf muscles, lifting up into the chest, but keeping the tailbone down. Breathe evenly and deeply. So just a variation of viparita, karanhi, just to really activate your legs, lengthening from the heels, or lengthening from the hips up into the heels, lengthening the heels up towards the ceiling, pulling the toes down toward your kneecaps, so you really stretch out the calves. Hit the fronts of the thighs into the fronts of the thigh bone. Breathe evenly. Just be soft as you extend. And then gently just release the legs. And then get your blanket for your head. And then just lay yourself in a really good straight line right down the center of your mat. Have the blanket underneath your head. Move any bits of equipment out of the way that might prevent you from stretching out. Just make sure you're in a really good straight line. And then just allow the body to release into the floor. So breathe evenly and deeply listen into the breath. Consciously allow the leg and arm muscles to unhook. So the legs and the arms become heavy. And then out of that heaviness comes a feeling of lightness that radiates out from the bones, radiates throughout the body down into the tips of the toes, up into the torso, into the shoulders, into the arms, into the toes, into the neck and into the head, using the in-breath and the out-breath to distribute that feeling of lightness. Allowing that feeling of energetic lightness to radiate into the organs, into the muscles and the flesh and skin. Basking in that feeling of energetic lightness. Consciously letting go of any tension in the muscles of the arms and shoulders. And then when you're ready, just gently wiggle your toes, wiggle your fingers. Start to bring yourself back into this pose of Shavasana, back into the room. Just bring your knees in towards your chest and have a grounding massage on your back, just ironing out any tension in your back and just bringing yourself back into the room, back into the body, and then just roll onto your right side, stay down for a breath or two. And then straighten out your top leg, come back up into a seated position. Just a final cross legs with your hands in Namaste, just a final spinal lift. Close your eyes and draw your breath in through your nose down into the abdomen. Be conscious of the energy that you have released through your practice this morning, that good, positive, healthy flow that comes from the extensions and the forward bends and the inverted poses and the twists. And then draw your chin down to meet your chest. Spend a moment to acknowledge the positive energy you've created inside, and then radiate some of that positive energy out into the world. And then release the backs of your hands down towards your knees, palms facing upwards, and as you raise your head, allow your eyes to softly open and focus to softly come back. Thank you very much. Thank you. So hopefully you feel as though you have really lifted your energy and given yourself some good positive energy to put into your day. So thank you very much for joining me.